Hello, welcome to another episode of Steelfur Speaks. In today's episode, we've got Draft on in the background because it is draft practice season. The best card in this pack. This is pack one, pick one. Potentially uphold tradition, maybe. Flex clause, pretty good. Second tenant of Chi Wind is pretty good too. I mean, 3 for 5. Don't really like Emissary of Tides as much. It's kind of a choice here. Homage is good. Uphold Tradition is good. Doesn't send illusionist signals. Probably good enough to pack one, pick one. I think we just take that, lock it in, and then I'm playing Battlefront Bastion yellow. I like the look of that. I'm still not committed to illusionist. I am just kind of floating the illusionist idea, right? You know, take one illusionist card, one non-illusionist card, one chi card. I'm still quite open, but I imagine illusionist will be open. It's been open a lot, but I'm just in a random draft, so we'll just see how this goes. What has been happening in the world? Japan sold out of the first print run they did of Part of the Mistveil. It was really exciting. They've announced a second one. They've also announced that Heavy Hitters is also being printed in Japanese, and that is in addition to the two 120 special Japanese only sets, 120 card special Japanese only sets they announced in Japanese in a Japanese interview that they did, only in a Japanese publication, which is essentially the role of those is to get basically to get cards that Japanese players wouldn't have access to in Japanese into the Japanese language for the classes in specifically Mistveil and the set after Mistveil. So what does that mean? That means that there is a view in LSS, and I believe this is correct, that the classes in Mistveil and also the next set need English language printings of some of the more complicated cards from previous sets. Now, what does that look like? That probably looks like Ninja, Bonds of Agony, quite a complicated card. Descendant Gustwave, quite a complicated card, especially if you think about people being new to the game, right? Some of those combo pieces from Ninja probably need reprinting, right? You know, LSS is not silly. They know that some cards like Bonds are going to see play in Zen, and not having a Japanese language version of them makes sense. There are, however, some question marks as to what else that set entitles, because if you think about some of the more complicated assassin cards, for example, the more complicated illusionist cards, you do actually get into the majestic rarity, right? If you think about something like Surgical Extraction, okay, which is a vital card in assassin decks and also is quite complicated. That in not your native language is quite complicated. So, you know, having a Surgical Extraction printed in Japanese kind of makes a lot of sense. Then if we think about something like, well, I mean, the big one is Codex of Frailty, right? Quite a complicated card, not massively complicated, but again, we're talking about this from the perspective of someone who is approaching the game clearly not as, you know, an experienced TCG player who's used to playing in multiple languages. We're talking about making the game of FAB as accessible as possible to people in Japan through the Japanese language. In that context, a reprint of something like Codex, which is currently £75 and still a staple in Assassin, and is quite complicated in English, kind of makes sense. I put money on, well, I haven't put money, but I'd bet at least a chocolate bar on something like Codex getting reprinted. And I know that it's tricky for LSS because they don't want, you know, to reduce the value of X and Y too much and all of that kind of stuff. But the reality is we've got a reasonably complicated card that feels essential for the class, that is gated behind a huge paywall. I mean, there's £75 at the moment. And we've got this set bringing tools. It's going to have Majestics in. Now, do you reprint Codex? Do you reprint Surgical? Or do you reprint Infiltrate? Like, where are the other Majestics coming in from Assassin? Like, you're not going to reprint Payout. maybe you are, but is that really the best choice? So you've got to, I'm kind of approaching it from this sort of thought process of what are they going to reprint? What makes sense for them to reprint? At a basic level, you've obviously got your commons, your uncommon base, from outsiders, from WTR, for those classes, and then from, Dusk to Dawn, and from Dynasty and the other ones. Stuff like, the rares make sense, like Haze Bending and Shimmers of Silvers and those kind of things. Sorry, that's a Majestic as well. So for Illusionist, Shimmer of Silver makes the perfect sense, right? That's a very good card to reprint. Phantasmaclasm, not a bad shout. So I think there's a lot of things that could potentially go into this. And I think there's just a question there as to how full-on LSS actually decides to go, right? Because they could go full tilt, and we could be getting codexes, we could be getting other cards that, again, stuff like Command and Conquer is a reasonably complicated card. It's not something to say that it's just so simple. So stuff like that could potentially be something that gets reprinted, right? So everything is kind of in the air. I don't think they're going to go full out and reprint all of the big staple generics like Tunic and CNC and E-Strike and all this kind of stuff. I don't. But I do think there will be value in the product. And I think the value in the product is going to come from specifically stuff like Codex, stuff like Surgical Extraction, Shimmers in Silver, Phantasmal Dreadmaw. I think these staple 20 to 30 to 40, Codex is the outlier, pound Majestics, which are a reasonable level of complexity that people who are coming at it from a different language are going to struggle. I think you could very easily see a reprint, because 120 cards, there's going to be some Majestics in there. The real question, of course, is are they going to do legendaries? Personally, I think they have to. If they're selling a booster pack, they have to see legendaries. So we're probably going to get, maybe Flick Knives reprint. We're probably going to get, Redback Shroud. I mean, I'd rather they didn't reprint that. We might get a Mask of Momentum reprint. That would make a lot of sense. All of those kind of things. And I think that would be really good. So those are coming out. You've also got Heavy Hitters as well. And that's coming out too. So that's actually just going to be really exciting, to have both Heavy Hitters combined with this new 120 card set, plus the fact that the Japanese set has mostly sold out is just really exciting for FAB in Japan, because from what I'm hearing, they didn't print a small amount of it. Like, they printed quite a number of cases, and the fact that it's sold out and they're doing a reprint, a wave 2, means that the thing is coming to Japan in a big way, and that is something I think we can all get really excited for, and I know I'm definitely really excited for. So back to the draft. So you'll see I am kind of checking my cards a little bit. I've gone for the boots. I've got the gloves. So we're doing all right. I could pick up the headpiece here. Blue Blanche is not bad either. Wash Away isn't bad, but I'm going to pick up the headpiece. I think that's a good shout. And then I just need a chest of some description. I've got a full equipment suite. In terms of like what I'm drafting, obviously I've got some pretty good reds so far. Haunting Spectre, Solitary Companions, and Spectral Manifestations. So that's going reasonably well. I don't hate the idea of getting a Koi Blessed Kimono. You can often control how much damage you take via shields and stuff like that, especially if you're going for that late game. Fetching out a Chi is quite good. You can see I'm firmly on Enigma. I did have a chance to not take Enigma. I think Assassin was still open, but Enigma seemed to be a really good fit, and I'm obviously comfortable playing all of them at this stage. So what else is going on? We've had our first few Mistveil tournaments, and I'm happy. My boy Zen has actually done very well at some of them. New, another hero I'm quite interested in, has also done very well. Enigma's done very well. This new set seems to be a step up in power level, which is interesting. It is interesting because at its core, FAB is, and someone has said this to me recently, and it's kind of stuck in my head, but at its core, FAB is a game of like essentially numbers, right? FAB is a numbers game because you are ultimately drawing in an optimized deck. You're drawing 4 cards a turn, and you're arsenaling 1, so you have the potential to do roughly 4 damage a turn per card, plus you have the potential to block 3 damage a turn per card. So ultimately, you know, in a game of numbers, you draw 4 cards, you attack for 16, your opponent blocks 12, you deal 4 damage, right? At a basic level, that's what FAB is. And then you have this complication where, you know, you have illusionists making board that you have to push through, and you have assassins threatening to banish and come in late game, and all these other things that kind of make the game good, but also like add a layer of obfuscation from that core mechanical feeling, right, of, let's grab another one of those, of, you know, just trying to get damage through. And then you have a set like this that comes in where the damage cap on something like a Zen is massive. It's like way up here. I've got 3, that's probably enough. And then the you know, control elements of Enigma are like up here, and then you've got Nu, and she's attacking it quite directly. So you kind of got this weird set which the numbers don't add up, right? The Nu numbers don't add up. She's attacking for 3 damage a turn, right? But somehow banishing a lot of cards from your deck, taking power from your deck. The Zen numbers don't add up because they're just too damn high, right? We saw that turn where he played 18 card turn, and he did 54 damage on the stream in the Philippines. Like, that's Singapore. That's insane. Like, that is insane. And then on the other side, you've got Enigma, who just sits there with, you know, full blocking her entire hand and playing a 10 ward or a Mirage for 8 attack, and then swinging with a weapon for 8. And if she can protect it, then that weapon for 8 comes in every single turn until you can't handle it anymore. And you're kind of saying, well, what do I even do with myself? You know, because I can't break through the wall. And all this stuff is going on. It's a really, really interesting set, but it does kind of bring you back to a question, right? And that question, not to, obviously, I quite like FAB and everything, but that question is a fundamental question about the game of Flesh and Blood, which is, you know, is all of this illusionist stuff, all of this assassin stuff, is kind of required, because at a base level, it's a game of 16 versus 12, right? It's a game of 20 versus 16 if they Arsenal or D-react and you've Arsenal a card, right? It's a game where that core 4-card draw, you can't escape it. Like, it's not... It has its limitations, I guess, is what I'm trying to get to. Like, it has its limitations, and it's not guaranteed that, you know, it is fun once those limitations are exposed, right? So I've got a bit of a challenge for the people watching this. Good challenge about 13 minutes in. Like, stop for a minute during your next game of FAB, look at your hand, and ask yourself, like, what am I actually doing this turn? Am I just playing 12 damage, right? Like, strip away all of the structuring and the sequencing and all that kind of stuff, and just ask yourself that basic question. So what am I actually doing? Am I just playing as much damage as I can? And then you kind of come to a thing that I've been thinking about for a while, where I think about games with alternate win conditions, and Magic has a lot of them, and FAB had some of them, and I think about what alternate win conditions look like in FAB, and I see illusionists, and I'm like, this is the grindiest stuff I have ever seen, right? And then you start, it just makes you ask questions. It just makes you ask questions about longevity and design and fun and, you know, optimal, like, power creep and all those kind of things. It makes you ask a lot of questions about fundamentals in the game, right? So just have a think about that for me, right? I'm not condemning anything. I'm not saying things are good or bad. I'm just saying, you know, have a think about that for me and let me know your thoughts on like how much we can obfuscate that core base where X amount of damage a turn is good, X amount of damage isn't, you know. And when does the game get, like, I don't want to say not fun, but like overcomplicated, or like when does that core loop break? That's just a question. It's just a design question. You know, if anyone wants to talk about it, who's, you know, works in flesh and blood design, get in touch. Otherwise, I'll just continue to speculate. But that's just a thought that's been on my mind recently. So there's the draft finished. You'll see I got a lot of, it feels like I was the only Enigma in certain cases. Not all of these are amazing, though. So the Waxing Spectres are fine. Spectral Manifestation's obviously great to get. Waning Vengeance Yellow probably gets cut. Single-Minded Determination's fine. This seems to be an all right deck to me, so we're gonna roll with that and import that into Fabry. I'm not gonna stream the games just because I don't know who my opponents are and I haven't really kind of geared up to ask permission. Plus, also I want this episode to end, so I will be playing this off in the background. But either way, I will post on Twitter and you can see how my deck pans out. I feel like this is a 2-1 deck. I don't feel like this is necessarily going to handle like a very good new, but I think it's decent and I'm happy enough to have drafted it. I think I would be happy to draft this in a tournament. I don't think I would be kicking myself if I drafted this in a tournament. You know, I got 35 playables. I can do some sideboarding. There's some good reds in there, and that's all you really need to win a draft. What else is going on? Dish of the week is something called Pad Kra Pow, and we'll do this from Walks of Life is quite good as the recipe. Hot Thai Kitchen is quite good. So this is a recipe that's essentially Thai holy basil, which is a sweeter version of basil. So if you've never had if you've never had Thai holy basil, it basically looks like this. So it looks a lot like basil, but the texture is like sweeter. It's kind of like very different. And this is a dish where I use normal basil all the time because sometimes you just can't find Thai basil. When I go to the Chinese supermarket, it makes the difference very good. Okay? Very good. So, you know, you need to get that because really this dish is Thai basil, chili, and then some stir-fry ingredients. So it is kind of important to the recipe, but if you can only get regular basil, it still tastes pretty good. You dice up some shallots, just get them nice and sliced, obviously in your wok, 3 minutes with some garlic. Then you chuck in your chilies, red chilies, green chilies, obviously more if you're using green chilies. What I would do if you're not so good with spice, go light on the chilies, and then you can always add in some chili crisp or something like that into the bowl once you've cooked it. Obviously, once you put the chilies in here, you can't take them out. Then, of course, you're going to put in your ground pork or beef. I used beef today. I didn't really have pork mince. It was great. And then you're putting in this mix of sugar, fish sauce, soy sauce, dark sauce, oyster sauce, you know, bit of sweetness, bit of sugar, bit of salty, bit of MSG maybe if you want to add that in. Put it over rice. And then the thing that you should do, which isn't in this recipe, but you should definitely do it, is deep fry, well, not deep fry, but seriously fry an egg, right? You see it in all the other recipes, right? You get a fried egg, you get it nice and crispy in your wok, put that on the top, you runny yolk, crack the runny yolk into the beef, and absolutely delicious. So pad kra pow, the pow is like the meat, so if you make it with beef, it's not called that anymore, but it's really tasty. I really, really recommend it. So that's the dish of the week. That was the draft of the week. I'm really excited for Mistvale. I'm doing tons of testing for nationals. I can't wait to sort of dive in and properly, you know, kind of get into the national season. And thank you all for listening. And I will speak to you all very, very soon. As always, if you've liked this episode, please do like, subscribe. Let me know if you like it. Let me know what other sorts of things you'd like to hear from me. I do also have a Patreon. You know, it doesn't really come with many perks. It is just there to support me. But if you want to give me a couple quid a month to help me get to more tournaments, that would be appreciated. I'm Steelfur Speaks. Have a great week, and I will speak to you all next week.